Welcome to the Flourishing Marriage Podcast. I'm Wade Arnold, pastor, psychologist, author, and coach. This is the place for Christian couples who believe that the best days of their marriage are still in front of them. Today, I want to start with something small. Think about the last thing that you said to your spouse before you walked out the door this morning, or maybe before you fell asleep last night. Or the last thing that you said in the car on the way wherever you were going. Don't judge it, just notice it. Most of us, if we're honest, don't even remember. The words came and went and we just moved on. That's normal. That's just a Tuesday. But here's what I've come to learn after sitting with hundreds of couples over the last several years. The words went somewhere. Even the ones that we don't remember saying, even the ones that felt like nothing, just the throwaway lines, they landed in someone. They either added something to their life or they took something away. And over months and years of Tuesdays, they built something. And that's what I want to talk about with you today. I think about a couple I'll call David and Lynn. That's not their real names. And they had been married for about a decade, almost a decade when I first met with them. They were good people, genuinely loved each other, faithful, showed up for their kids, their church, their community. Nobody looking at their marriage from the outside would suspect that anything was wrong. But Lynn said something in that first meeting, in our first conversation, that I've never forgotten. She said, "I feel like I live with someone who just barely tolerates me." David was stunned. He looked like he had been hit between the eyes with a 2x4, because that's not the way that he felt about her at all. He loved her, genuinely, authentically. He was sure of it, down in his bones. He just hadn't been saying it very much. Life was full. Work was hard. He assumed that she knew. He assumed that she knew how he felt. And that gap between how he felt and what she heard wasn't created by a fight. It wasn't created by betrayal or neglect or anything dramatic. It was created by years of words that never got said. Ordinary, true, simple words that stayed inside because there was always so much going on the outside. Lynn wasn't starving for poetry or flowers or chocolate. She was starving for affection. She was starving for, "I see you. I'm grateful for you. I'm so glad that we're still married." Here's something I've noticed over the years. Most couples who are struggling don't think of themselves as having a word problem. They think of themselves as having a conflict problem, or a busyness problem, or a distance problem that they can't quite explain. And sometimes those things are real, but underneath that, a lot of what I see, the quiet marriages, the ones where two people are the ones who technically are present, but somehow far away. And underneath all of that is an accumulation of words that never get spoken. Warmth that stayed internal. Appreciation that got assumed rather than said. It's not dramatic. That's why it's so hard to name and to identify. In marriages, you don't have to have a villain in the story. You just have to have two people who got busy and forgot to keep reaching for each other with their words. Scripture doesn't spend a lot of time being subtle about this either. It says this in Proverbs 18, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue." That's Proverbs. And I've read that verse probably 100 times in my life, but I still think we tend to domesticate it. We hear it and we think, yes, words matter, of course, be kind. And that's true, but the verse isn't saying that words have kind of a moderate effect on our marriage or our relationships. It says that there is a full range of human experience in what we say. Death and life. It sits right in our mouth. And that's not a metaphor simply for tone of voice. God is saying that what comes out of our mouth has the power to create or destroy, to give life or to take it. And the place where that is most true, most concentrated, and most consequential is in our marriages. because nobody else is that close to us. Nobody else's voice carries that much weight. James also talks about it, that the tongue is a small spark that can set an entire forest on fire. And most couples have felt that. The one sentence in an argument that changed the entire temperature of the room and the whole relationship for weeks. That comment that landed somewhere it shouldn't have, and it never fully left. But the spark goes in other ways too. A small true word spoken at just the right moment can set something alive in a person that nobody else could have reached except for our husband or our wife. I want to offer you something that I think might reframe the way you see this. Most of us were taught, either directly or just by watching the relationships around us when we were growing up, that you say what you feel when you feel it, and that affirmation flows out of emotion. You express warmth when you feel warm, or you say the kind thing when kindness is actually what you are experiencing in the moment. And that makes sense. It feels authentic. It feels genuine. But what I've watched happen in a lot of marriages is that when the warmth goes underground for a while, because life is hard, or there's been some friction, or you're just tired, the feeling goes away too. When the words stop, the feelings stop, both at one time. And the silence grows, and the silence creates distance, and that distance makes it harder to find the warmth. And now you're in this cycle that neither one of you chose, but both of you feel, and everyone in the house feels. You know what I've seen break that cycle, though, more than anything else, is when one person is deciding to speak before they feel it. And I don't mean in some kind of performative way, not pretending that everything is fine, just finding one true positive thing and saying it out loud. Something like, I notice how hard you work this week, or I'm grateful that you're still here, or I see the load that you're carrying, and I don't say that enough. Those sentences and others like them don't require the feeling to be fully present. They require honesty. And sometimes, but not always, but sometimes, the saying of the true positive thing is what brings back the feeling. There's something else I also want to point out. I do want to say it carefully, though, because some of you watching this or listening to this grew up in homes where words weren't used that way. Affirmation was not a part of your everyday language. People showed love simply by showing up and by providing or staying. And that is real love, and I'm not dismissing it, I'm not discounting it. But you may have brought that silence into your marriage without realizing it. Not in a withholding way or an intention to be unkind, but it's just normal in your experience. This is how your family worked and how some family works. People know they're loved. You don't have to keep saying it, and that's what you bring in. But your spouse may be standing right next to you, genuinely loved by you, but genuinely starving for your affection. And that's not a character flaw in you, and I don't want you to think that I'm being critical. That is a gap, though, that can be closed. It may take time, and it may not be perfect, but in reality, it can be closed, and it needs to be closed. The couples I've watched do this well don't overhaul their communication overnight. But one of them just started saying one true positive thing more than they used to. And then they said it again and again. And over time, the climate and the culture of the home changes. And everyone in the house senses it. Something shifted. Here's the other side of this, though, and it matters a lot. Words spoken carelessly or in anger don't just disappear when the moment passes. They go somewhere too. I've sat with spouses who are still carrying something that was said years ago, even maybe in their family of origin. It could be a label that got attached to that person in the heated moment, or a dismissal that felt permanent even though it wasn't meant that way. Or maybe it was a joke that landed wrong and never got acknowledged. The person who said it moved on, but the person who heard it, they didn't. And this isn't about compounding guilt, and I'm not saying that you've done irreparable damage to your marriage. I am saying that the tongue that can build is the same tongue that can wound, and it's worth being honest about both. If something comes to mind right now, some word that you said that you know landed somewhere that it shouldn't have or where you didn't intend, that's worth going back to. And it doesn't necessarily take a big conversation. Sometimes it can just be very simple, saying, hey, you know what? I said something a while back, and I know that it hurt you, but I don't think I ever acknowledged it. I want you to know that I'm sorry. It can be that simple and that small, and it can move mountains in your marriage. I want to say something, too, to the person who is watching this alone. Maybe your spouse is not interested in these kinds of conversations. Maybe they wouldn't watch a video like this, or maybe you're the one who found this video or listened to this audio who's been thinking about this and wishes something would shift. I want you to know that one person changing the way they speak in their marriage can fix something. It doesn't fix everything, and it does not guarantee that your spouse will respond the way that you hope. But it does change the climate. It does change the climate in your marriage. Quietly, gradually. You are not powerless in your marriage just because you're doing this alone. And sometimes, again, not always, but sometimes, one person speaking differently is what creates an opening for the other person to slowly come back and re-engage. So let me leave you with this. Think about your spouse for just a moment. Not the version of them that you've been frustrated with lately. The real one. The one that you chose. The one that you married. The one that you fell in love with. God is still working on them the same way that He's still working on you. What do you actually see in your spouse that you haven't said out loud recently? Not a compliment, but something positive and true. Maybe it's the way that they parent. Maybe it's the way that they show up even when they're tired. Maybe it's their faith that held strong in a season of life where yours wavered. The way they love you, quietly, in ways that you sometimes forget. Whatever it is, that's where you start. It's not with a program. It's not with a challenge, although I have a challenge for you this week. It's not with a framework or a list of checks. Just one true positive thing said out loud to the person sitting across from you. If you want to take what we've talked about today and put it into practice, I've put together something simple for you that you can do starting today. It's called the Words of Life Challenge. 7 days, 1 prompt a day, delivered straight to your inbox. Each one is rooted in Scripture, and it's designed to help you speak something specific and intentional and positive into your marriage. Gratitude, affirmation, encouragement, repair, affection, vision, and prayer. A one-word focus every day. Nothing complicated, just one true thing said out loud to the person that you married. You can do it together, or you can start on your own. Either way, the link to sign up is in the description below. It takes less than 30 seconds a day. Day one will arrive right after you sign up. 7 days from now, your marriage is either going to be exactly where it is today, or it can be a little different and a little better. It's worth a few minutes every day. Let me give you this final encouragement. Your marriage is still being built. Both of you are still becoming. And the voice that has more influence over who your spouse is becoming than almost any other voice in their entire life is yours. I'm Wade Arnold, and this is the Flourishing Marriage Podcast, where Christian couples learn to thrive together. The best is still ahead. I'll see you next time.